Hello, and welcome to my dining room. This is episode 12 of the Live and Learn Knitting Podcast. My name is Anne, or Annie, and I'm coming to you with a cattail from the banks of the Mississippi River in western Wisconsin. Today is Thursday. There's that cattail again. Thursday, February 15th, 2024. George, well, maybe he jumped down now, so maybe he's done helping me broadcast, except he's touching a plastic bag now, and he's going to cause some noise issues, probably. He wants attention. One moment, please. Georgie, this is not for you. Okay, rather than start and stop, I know I just got started, but he'll be back. He hasn't settled yet, but I didn't want to take the time to settle him. In my dining room here, you can probably see I've got a lot of sun going on, and I'm going to try to stay where I'm in a good spot rather than over here and getting washed out by a sunbeam. So the sun's going to be moving as we do this. So I'm worried if I take too much time to settle George the cat that I will lose my shade column here. Oh, if that makes any sense. Anyway, welcome back. It's been an extra week in between podcasts, and that is because there's been a lot of living happening as opposed to, and I hope learning a little bit, but living and not as much knitting. I think I overdid the knitting in January. And I did a lot of small little projects, and I knit a lot every day, and I maybe got not burnt out, but overwhelmed by too much knitting, and I need to do some other things. So now the last few weeks I've not had as much enthusiasm for it, and in fact I finished a little project yesterday. And I always write everything down in a spreadsheet when I finish it and how much yarn it took and all that little details. And it was the first thing I'd finished in February. So, we're halfway through the month. So that was odd, a bit odd. I mean, I've been working on things, but not steadily. So we'll talk more about that towards the end of the episode. I also just want to say, if you like the podcast, please hit the like button and the subscribe button and the bell if you want to be notified when new episodes come out. All those good things. I really appreciate that. Yes, and I still enjoy doing this. I was having a bit of, I really have a good, want to talk about what I want to talk about today, but I thought, am I running out of ideas? I don't think so. Sometimes some topics are just more of a challenge to put together and research. And I'm sorry, I just have to pause. I have to put my glasses back on. And here comes George again. Oh, look out the window, because we have not had snow for a long, long time. And we got a dusting of snow last night, overnight. It's not even enough to fully cover the grass, and the roads are dry. No need to even plow, but it just makes all of the trees and evergreens and that I see out this window, they're just sparkling right now, and I've missed that. We didn't have a lot of winter light, that beautiful white light when the snow, reflects everything. Even if it's a cloudy day, you've got that just that snow light, and I've missed that. And yeah, so it's kind of dazzling, sparkling sun right now, and it's very beautiful. George, show your best side, George. So yeah, living. I've been doing some living. I had some doctor visits to do in late January, early February. I did a blood donation one day. I've been checking in with some family members. I'm the youngest in the family, so I have an older brother and an older sister, and yeah, had spent just some afternoons with them visiting. Um, got a chance to catch up with a friend who lives about 50 miles from here, and he came up and we did some hiking and went out to dinner. That was really nice. But my big exciting adventure of living was I got to participate in a training day for the Minnesota-Wisconsin Canine Search and Rescue Program. I have a friend who, a work friend who, when she retired, she was always, I think, well, even while she was working, was getting into being first responder and that sort of thing, and firefighter. But when she retired, I believe, she went full bore into training her dog, Dace, to be search and rescue dog. And now she has a new pup since Christmas, Casey, and that dog's getting trained as well. So she's part of this program, and she was coordinating a training day, and she said, does anyone want to come and help lay track for the dogs to find you? And I missed an opportunity a month or so ago to do that with her. And I said, yes, I will definitely do that. So we met at the nearby Boy Scout camp, and it was just amazing to see these dogs in action and see how they're trained and what goes into it. And there were probably, I think there were 6 dog owners there, and some of them had a couple dogs, some only had one. You wouldn't even know it because they kept them in their kennels in the vehicles while they were not being trained. I mean, it wasn't just a big dog free-for-all. It was and that's part of it, because they have to also learn to that they're going to be in their kennel, they're going to be traveling to various locations and all of that. So all of those things they have to get acclimated to. And these dogs, except for Casey the puppy, most of them were older and familiar with that. So it was just a refresher kind of thing to get them out. And that's it. They need constant training and in searching and everything to stay sharp, just like all of us in the things that we do, then we want to do well. We need to keep practicing at it. So they had a course where they had an open field and like 3 stations, and one station, so they're trained to search for human remains is part of the training. So one station had 3 boxes, and I think one box had, by box, like a metal container. And George is brushing up against the tripod. Thanks, George. And the camera. Thanks, George. Don't do that, George. So, so they had the 3 metal stations, and one station had, I think, dog food or dog treats in. One had animal remains in it, or chicken. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but one had the human remains. And so they were successful if they only stopped and located the human remains. And then they would get their reward. And a lot of times the reward was playing with a toy rather than a food reward. So that was really fun to see. And they all the dogs had their own individual, isn't he cute, own individual way of identifying their remains. Some would lay down, some would just sit, some would sit and then bark, a bark signal. So it was just fascinating to watch these people and the dogs. So my job, they took me, one of the trainers took me, we hiked through the woods. And I thought originally I would just get to go out wherever I pleased and then have them find me. But no, that didn't happen. They wanted to lay a specific track, I guess. So we started out in the woods, and the trainer was not close to me at all. We had a good 10 feet maybe between us, minimum. Sometimes it was a lot more than that. And so I was on one side of the road and they were on the other side of the road. We were going through the woods, and then we crossed a roadway, and I was walking along the edge of the road for a long time. And then I went up on another road where they went out into an open field, and they were giving me directions, like go up this hill this far. And I thought, well, I'm on an open road. I'm not out, into deep vegetation or woods or anything. I thought, this seems almost too easy. So I was kind of zigging and zagging a little bit. And then they said, okay, now you get to this clearing, come down this little embankment and out into this field. Since it was at the Boy Scout camp, this was like a sports field. Walk along the edge of that, go around this structure, go along the edge of the fenced area over to another roadway. They gave me directions, and like I said, they were standing out further away then, and they said, okay, and kind of meet up back over here. And then we went around a building, and that was the end of my trail. I stopped at the front of the building, and that's where I was going to be sitting and waiting. So we did that and set that trail, the track, and then we went back and watched the other dogs work for a while. And so that laid there for about an hour, my scent, a good hour or so. And then we said, okay, well, now you go get in place at the end of the track there that we set down, and we'll send, get the dog. And the dogs, when they're doing the human remains searches, are off leash because they need to kind of go everywhere. And they had another trainings area set up for them where they had, like, one thing was hanging from a bridge that they had to cross, and a footbridge, and one other one was in the trunk of a tree that had fallen over, and then another one was under a tarp that was actually just there I think from the camp, and had come off of anyway, it was under a tarp near a fire pit. So when the dogs were searching for that, they were off leash, and it was one dog at a time basically. But when they were tracking a scent trail, they were on the leash with their owner. So I waited, and they had another person, another former coworker with us, and she had laid a track in a different direction, and so she was out in her little spot in the woods, and I was my spot by this building, and I could see from where I was sitting, when the dog crossed the roadway, I could watch the dog follow the scent trail. And it was just fascinating because that had been, more than an hour. And I understand that they need to, sometimes the trails are days old and longer. But that dog was right on the scent, and, kind of zigged and zagged when I zigged and zagged, came down in the exact spot down the embankment where I came down, and came around. And it took us probably 10 minutes or so to walk this loop and lay that track in the beginning. And it took the dog about 30 minutes to find me. And they found me. Here I am. And most of the dogs that were there that day were German Shepherds. There was one that was another kind of a shepherd, but I don't remember. And a couple other breeds. There was a golden retriever, I believe, and then three labs. So yeah, it was just, it was a good day to be out. It was a nice warmer day. It was cloudy to begin with, but then it got sunny and nice. And after we did most of the training, we had a lunch. They brought, a picnic lunch for us, and yeah, it was just fun to meet some new people. Be outside, see how, what it takes to do this work, and it's valuable work for sure. And I just had so many questions for them, and they were all very, welcoming and informative group, and I hope to do it again. So, so that was that Saturday. That was a week or so ago when I maybe should have been thinking about a podcast, but that's life. So today, back to knitting. And yeah, I have really not been in the mood to knit. I've done little bits, but not a whole lot. And I realized that the other night when I was knitting on this project, I'll show you that I was knitting a row. I mean, this is a fast, easy project. And I was knitting a row and I'd put it down. Then I knit another row. I'm watching a program on TV, and I knit another row and I just put it down. And I thought, wow, what is happening? I just should have been just whipping it right out, and I wasn't. So anyway, the theme of today is help for a bad hair day. Because I think I am not a vain person, or I spend I do want to look nice and present myself well in many different occasions, but I don't go overboard with it. And last episode I did make sure that I took a shower and I had clean hair, but boy, my hair, and I take my glasses off to do this, and I couldn't necessarily see what was going on with my hair. And I had looked in the mirror before I started, and I had combed my hair, and I thought, yeah, this is good. And I didn't put it back in combs or put a headband on or anything. But boy, it was flying all over the place in this direction. And someone, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, but someone even had, gave me a nice compliment about my hair and how they liked the gray and everything. And I thought, oh, it was just a sea hag mess last time. It was terrible. And it seems like every other episode it's okay, and then the next time it's like it's a hot mess. I mean, and a bad hot mess, not a good hot mess at all. So that made me realize and remember that I should have done something different with my hair. And I do, up until the pandemic, I was coloring it, having it colored. Sometimes I had done it by myself, and then I decided, yeah, I would go and have it colored. And yeah, with the pandemic, that just came to a full stop. And I thought, all right, this is a good opportunity for me to let it grow out and see what the gray is like, because I knew it would be gray. I knew it would be a mix of brown and gray. I had brown hair, still have brown hair when I was growing up. And I do know that when my mom turned gray, for a long time, it was sort of that steel wool, black and gray mix, which was not necessarily that attractive. And it took her a long time to get to that snowy white, pretty gray. So I thought, well, Lord, and I do a lot in the summertime. I'm out in the sun every day. So it gets a natural sun bleach lightening to it, but that does not stay necessarily in the wintertime. I do use one of those shampoos from time to time, the purple kind that's supposed to help with make the gray a little more pleasing. But yeah, I don't color it anymore. And I actually cut it myself too, because it's just long straight hair. And I found a YouTube on how to, you hold it up here under your neck, and then you can, and it will fall like this in the back, which that's all I need. What was going on up here was this short bit that you can see back in, and my hair is also really fine, and it's getting thinner, which it's a challenge. So I could probably find a good thin spot here, and it's messy. But what was happening with this is that back in September, I've got this plant that grows in the yard, and it's called stick seed. I can't remember. There's like a Virginia stick seed or somebody. It's a somebody stick seed. And it's a very nondescript plant when it's growing, so I don't notice it in my yard. We'll talk about that maybe in a future episode, but my yard's more wild than tame. And so there's a lot of plants that aren't that pleasant, like this stick seed. It comes up, it's unnoticeable, and then it sends out these fronds of a very nondescript flower, which is also unnoticeable. And I really don't notice this plant until it goes to seed. and I walk past it, especially with something like knit pants on, or, or a shirt, and it gets caught on my shirt, and like the whole frond of the seed, the is on here, and I go to pick it off, and all I get is the stem, and I get just this row of 30 or 40 little seed stickers that I need to then individually pick off. Oh, it's annoying. It's one of the most frustrating plants that I don't know if it has any benefit. I don't think so. Probably the animals like it, and that's why it keeps spreading around the yard. Well, this spring and summer, I really made an effort to seek it out, find it while it was still in its green growing stage, and pull it. And I did. I pulled a lot of it. I got rid of a lot of it. And I was very happy because I thought we won't have this problem in the fall. And I also have this small patch of stinging nettle that I am trying to decide what to do with, because nettle has a lot. You can eat nettle. You can dye with nettle. You can actually spin the nettle fiber. I'm not going to go that far, I don't think, but eating and dyeing might be a choice. However, I also don't like to get stung by nettle, and I have. So I was also trying to pull the nettle, and carefully. And I missed some of the nettle, and I realized in September or October, whenever it was, that, here was a whole bunch of the stick seed, if like maybe half a dozen plants, and by that time they were big, and had gone to seed and had those horrible seeds on them. And I missed them, and I thought, oh, dang. So I very carefully went out there with the right kind of clothes on so that they wouldn't necessarily stick to the clothing. And I was doing this, from a distance, just grabbing by the roots and pulling the plant out and I was carrying it like this to go and put it in the wheelie bin, in the trash bin, to get rid of it. And the wind picked up and it went like that, and it blew just one, right into my head, and the hair was all blowing around. I didn't put a hat on or a bandana or anything on my head, and so it got caught in my hair, and bad, and and it just made this snarly nest because the wind was also blowing my wispy hair around, and I was so upset. And I put everything else into the trash bin, and I broke off this one stem that had gotten stuck in my head. And I came in the house, and I was I couldn't comb it out. I couldn't pick them out one by one. So I just had to whack off, right in the front, whack off this piece of hair. And when it was short and whacked off, it kind of stayed in line with the other hair on my head, more or less. But now that it's finally growing out a bit more, that had just gotten all over the place in the last episode, and it was horrid, and I didn't even notice it because I can't see necessarily without my glasses. And I take my glasses off today, and it's not so bad, but I still can't see because it's just the wrong distance, and I just didn't want to have the glare from the windows. This room, I call it my dining room. When I first moved in here, I called it the sunroom because it's windows on 2 walls, and really the whole one side of the house is all windows, and it's lovely, and it lets in so much sunlight. And I called it the sunroom, but that was just being a little too pretentious, I think. And it does have my dining room table in here, so it is the dining room. But anyway, so I just don't like the glare on the glasses. And I had the hair blowing all over the place. It was a mess last time. I talked good, but I spoke well. I talked good. But yeah. So thank you for the kind words about my hair. I don't put a lot of work and effort into my hair. I do sometimes. I like to curl it. I don't do a whole lot with it. I'm hair challenged. That trimming thing. That's really good. I can't look in the mirror and do the backwards, do something to my hair because I'm doing it backwards to what's in the mirror. That's a challenge for me. So I used to wear it in braids. I will, do minimal hairstyling stuff with it, but most of the time this is it. It's in a ponytail or it's down and maybe pulled back in some way. That's about it. And that's fine. That's fine. I'm fine with that. But I did want it to be neat and tidy. That's the thing. I think with gray hair, especially, if you keep it neat and tidy, like this is today, it's fine. When it is all loose and flowy, if you're lucky, it still needs to be a tidy, loose and flowy. Otherwise, yeah, you start to look like Grandmama on the Addams Family. I do anyway. I do. Or Einstein, or, something not so good. So, not so pleasing. Yeah. So, I do try to keep it tidy. And most of the time I wear it in a ponytail because I just don't want it falling in my face. And I've got short bits. And I don't know why I also have short bits over on this side, but I do sometimes, it's just how it grows. Anyway, enough about the hair. Here's what to do about the bad hair. Item number 1 is this. Talking for a half an hour about not knitting. This is the Casapinka Empower People bandana / cowl pattern. And she put this out in 2020 and she wanted everyone to knit one for the election, because there was this big controversy about our election here in the United States. Yeah, it was really something. So whether you were red or blue, she made this purple bandana and wanted everyone to wear one. And I did knit this and I wore it at the election. I'm an election inspector and I did wear this that day. And it was just the perfect little thing. And yes, she suggested purple, and so I did make my first one out of purple. I had one ball of Shibui Drift. And Shibui was a yarn that Yarnology in Winona carry. That's where I got this. I shouldn't say I never intentionally bought some Shibui. I did for a project. And I'm not enamored with Shibui yarns. I think they're very nice. They're pricey. And now Shibui has had gone out of business in the last year, stopped producing yarn. I think that was early 2023. But then by the end of 2023, the yarn lines had been purchased by Madelinetosh. I don't know if they're back up and in production yet or not, but that's the plan, that Madelinetosh is going to be taking over all the Shibui yarns, or the certain ones, ones that they want to produce and continue with. So this was, Shibui Drift. And I forgot to write down what the content is. I believe it's wool and cashmere. And it is lovely soft. It is so soft. And that was, like I said, I didn't ever intentionally buy it, but Yarnology would have oddballs down in their discount basement area. And that's where this came from, and I didn't know what to do with it. And then this project came up and it was perfect for just a 1 skein, 50 grams, because it is a pattern that did I bring the patterns with me? I did not. It's basically a triangle. There's a little short section at the beginning. I can show you. You start here with this number of stitches and you're increasing on one edge. And you go around and then you do some straight rows to get this side. And she wanted, I can't remember, she had a different ending to it. And I don't think I did straight rows is what happened. It came together just fine anyway with just that few number of stitches. And I just did seam it there rather than do anything like a 3-needle bind. You can't do a 3-needle bind off because you're doing a vertical edge to a horizontal edge. So yeah, it came together, very nicely. and it is perfect for a dicky type of a cowl. I love it. It's it fits really well around the neck, and it's good for that. And then it does double duty as a bandana. And that is, I hope you can see the back because I can't see what I'm doing right now. But it works well for a bandana, and I have maybe worn it. Oh, I didn't put my ponytail out to do that. I have maybe worn it just as much as a bandana as I have as the cowl. So because of the hair, because it helps hold my little stray flyaway hairs in place, and it sits well. It's not tight. It's not loose either. It will stay on really nicely. So it was a good project to have 2 uses out of it. And I had always said I wanted to make another one, or 1 or 2 or 3. So and see, now my hair's gonna be all messy. So in anticipation of this podcast, I got out some yarn, and I have another one started. So yeah, you can see here, start with X numbers. And this is a free pattern on Ravelry. I will link to it in the show notes. And you just, do a triangle. I don't have the pattern with me. She had a little different edge treatment. I am slipping the first stitch of every row knitwise. I think I had started on this one slipping them pro-wise, and it was very loosey-goosey and floppy, and I didn't like it, and I like it better as the knitwise. It just gives a little bit of a textured edge, but I think it's very neat and tidy, but it still is a slip stitch. So yeah, I don't know what this yarn is. It's a singles yarn. The color looks like a Ravelry color, like Ceresa, but I'm not sure it was a leftover yarn that was in the stash cart, I think, at Yarnology, or in some other trade opportunity in one of my knitting groups. But I weighed, I always weigh everything to see how much yarn it takes. And again, this was a 50-gram skein. So this is, I think, 64 grams here, so I'll have plenty. And it's actually coming out a little bit wider than the purple version, and that's fine, because it's just I can like hold it up against this one and knit it to the same length that I need. And if it's longer this way, that's okay. That'll be fine. It's this length here, which is the straight edge, that I need to be concerned with, and it'll work out just fine. And so this I actually got a little more enthusiastic about making, and I was working on this last night. So that's the first project in how to help a bad hair day. Yeah, and that's a good one, because double duty. Second one is a headband. This is also a free pattern. Let me see here if I can get this on. And this could be another cowl. I'm putting it on top of this one. It doesn't lay as nicely as the other, but this is a headband. And I'm sorry, I don't remember what yarn this is. It was also a one skein oddball that I picked up somewhere. It's a wool. It's probably a superwash wool of some variety. 50 gram ball. I lost my train of thought. Oh, when I put my Ravelry page together, I made a whole bunch of these right in a row, and I was making them for gifts for friends at the holidays, and because it works up so fast. And I made some. I think I donated some to a silent auction fundraiser. I had a couple that I was trying to sell, and I might have sold them. So in my Ravelry notes, I just made a bunch of these, and I showed the photos, and I didn't put any yarn information or anything like that, or even needle size. It was very vague. It was just like, oh yeah, I made a lot of these. It's a good pattern. And I also had made adjustments to the pattern, and I didn't write those in Ravelry either. So it was bad note-taking on my part. Bad record keeping. Poor record keeping. I'm going to try to do better. So I had to revisit this pattern and remember all my little tweaks. Now, this is a free pattern. Where I first saw this pattern was in a magazine called Creative Knitting. And I don't have the exact issue here, but this was Creative Knitting. No longer published. It actually started out as Knitting Digest, a smaller version, smaller size, Knitting Digest, which was published by House of White Birches in Indiana. And I think before it was Knitting Digest, they had Knitting World, they had Crochet World, they had other things. And that was Crochet World was the magazine that my mom had submitted her crochet designs to. So that publisher. And I don't think I ever subscribed to Knitting Digest, but I would find it at the grocery store a lot of times. And I was still working in town at the time and going back and forth. So I, stopped for groceries a lot and would pick it up. They would do a little photo index on the back of their issues. And after, I don't know how many years, as a small issue, they went to this bigger size. And I actually enjoyed this magazine. I thought they had a lot of good projects in here, and it was mostly projects. They had ads, but they weren't overwhelming ads. And they would still do this photo index at the back of the magazine. And that's a lot of projects in one issue. They did, and then after a time, and I don't know if it was when they switched to be Creative Knitting. I think it was after that. Yes, after that. They were bought up by Annie's Crafts, which they do a lot of books and some publications and patterns, single patterns and things like that, widely available in the chain craft stores, Michael's and Joann's and etc. So they would have nice photos and pattern details and everything. So in the issue that this was in, which was September 2010, they had this headband, and I liked it, and I made a lot of them. The pattern is from Drops, and I want to talk just briefly about Drops and Drops patterns. We don't have too much Drops yarn in the US. I don't find it readily available. It's European yarn, and I'm not even sure which country it comes from, if it's Sweden or Norway or Denmark or Germany. It's a European product. And they have a European website for all kinds of free patterns. And so this was one of their free patterns. And in that 2010 issue of Creative Knitting, there were 5 Drops patterns. And then there were, the rest of the patterns were from designers, paid designers. And I don't know if they used that many Drops patterns in that issue because they needed filler, or if they just, liked that, or they had a contract with Drops. I am not sure. But you can also find the pattern free on the Drops website. It's written a tiny bit differently because their patterns are translated into English from whatever language the original is. And that can be, those translations can be a little awkward. For instance, and here's another one. This is knit in Ultra Alpaca Barocco. For instance, they wanted you to knit the first and last stitch of every row on every round, or every row. So, first and last in knit. So what you're doing is you're making a little column of garter stitch up the edge. So that's what they say, knit 1 garter stitch. Why not just say knit 1, knit 2, purl 2, knit 2, purl 2 across the row, and knit 1, which I think is what the Creative Knitting pattern says. And, you know, so there's little things like that, that the drops patterns are a bit hard to disseminate sometimes. But they're not impossible. You just have to work at it, read it through a few times to understand them, especially if they're something more complicated with maybe color work or, you know, multiple texture patterns, or, yeah, they sort of chop them up into pieces and then put the pieces back in an odd way, if that makes any sense. Anyway, the other thing I want to say about drops patterns is I have heard and I have seen where, yes, drops seems to copycat other designers' patterns. I can only see this, like right now, I think everyone has seen on Ravelry the Sophie scarf, which is a long, narrow strip of garter stitch that, you know, that gets a little wider and then it narrows out again. And it's a very narrow scarf and you knot it around your neck. Well, there is a version of the Sophie scarf on drops now. And the Sophie scarf is not a free pattern. The drops version of it is a free pattern because all of their patterns are free. So did they plagiarize that pattern 100%? I don't know. Did they do an homage type pattern? I don't know. Because I don't have the original version of the Sophie scarf. I am making one. I looked at it and I thought, okay, I see what they're doing, and I just sort of made up my own version of it. But I saw one, you know, so that's a basic, kind of a basic pattern. You know, knit a long stretch of garter stitch, do some increases, do some decreases. It's pretty basic. But I have also seen a more complicated pattern for some knitted undergarments, knitted pants that were ribbed and, you know, had some stockinette panels. And it's very clear that there's a pattern on drops almost identical to those undergarments that, you know, some designer created. So it does seem like it. I tried to get verification from someone who is in the craft industry if they had any knowledge of this, and they did not. They weren't aware of it, but they suggested that I contact drops directly and ask the question. And I haven't done that yet. I still want to do that. I will do that and see if I get an answer from them. I have to, you know, obviously phrase it diplomatically. I'm not going to be accusatory, but I'm definitely interested. It's just an information thing that I want to know. I don't think there's been any litigation involved with it, you know, and sometimes designers will go that far and do that if they feel that they're being infringed upon. Back to the headband. So that's all I know about drops patterns. Drops patterns are free. There are an abundance of them. I've used some for different things. When I did this, it was a creative knitting pattern for me more than a pattern from drops. You can find it. Oh, and the other thing I want to say about creative knitting, when at some point after they switched to this large format, they also started offering a digital subscription, and you could do both. And I think the cost was affordable to do both. And so I did. So I was able to get all of these also in a digital format, PDFs, which I have saved, you know, on my computer in a folder. And that was nice because I couldn't find my exact copy of Creative Knitting that the headband pattern was in. And like I say, they sort of reworked the drops instructions so they're a little more clear. So it was nice because I was able to look it up in my folder and just print out those 2 pages and, make my little tick marks on the pattern sheet. And I wouldn't have even had to print it out. I just did that to make my notes on so that I can then put them in Ravelry. Okay, back to the headband. My changes are, they have you cast on, and I'll just say it's 19 stitches because it's a free pattern. I think I can say that. They have you cast on 19 to start with. And like I said, they wanted you to do a knitted edge stitch. Well, you know me, I don't do that. I want to slip an edge stitch. So I was, slipping that first stitch on each edge. It's basic, and so they wanted you to cast on. And then you sew a seam at the end. I don't want to sew a seam. So so I would cast on. Here's the version I'm working on. So I did a provisional cast on, a chain stitch, and I picked up into that. And I did 1 row of stockinette. I didn't jump right into ribbing. I did 1 row of stockinette so that I would have clear. I'll do another row at the end before I graft, so that I have 2 rows of stockinette stitch to graft together and do Kitchener stitch rather than Kitchener stitch in ribbing, which isn't impossible, it's just fussier. And by doing that, you can kind of see on the inside what I get is, this. I get 1 row of stockinette that I knit, and then the row in between is the grafting. And so that just looks like that on the inside. You don't even notice that I've done that. I mean, there's the stockinette on the outside. And it's in the back of the neck. And it works fine. It's very, ergonomic isn't the right word. Ergonomic. That's not the right word. What am I trying to say? Organic. Organic. That's it. Yeah, it flows together very nicely. So the way this pattern is shaped, and I like this shaping a lot, the way it flares out like that is kind of easier. This is the inside row, and what you're doing is you're increasing in the purl ridges, the vertical purl ridges, you're increasing more stitches. So on the front side, the knit ribs are maintained and the purl ribs are what grow. And I think because purl has that tendency to recede, it's just a nicer flow to that shaping. So I really like that. And they tell you, knit for so many inches, do your increases across in the purl stitches, knit for so many more, do another set of increases, knit, and then you knit, plain at the center hunk, and then you start doing decreases. And that's the thing. I had to make a note of where my center was, and then so that my decreases came out spaced at the same points that the increases were on this side. And once I had that down, then it was easy to make a whole bunch. So yes, I'm making another one, and this yarn is Stahl Wool Big Print, which is out of production. This is an old yarn again from the 80s or so. And another one that I had picked up a single ball somewhere because I like these colors and didn't know what to do with it. And here, now it's going to become a headband. It looks a lot like this headband, but a little different. So, yeah, it'll just be good to have another one. Because we, don't wear the same thing all the time. So these are my helps for bad hair days and in the wintertime. And the thing I also like about this is that it's loose enough that I can wear earmuffs underneath and put the headband on. But I did notice this fall, when I was wearing the headband outside, the back of my head on a cold day was getting cold. I really did need a hat versus a headband. So the headband is not hardcore winter wear for me, and although I would probably put on my earmuffs and a thin hat and the headband and, just layer myself up on a winter day if I really needed to. But this is nice. This is nice. And I have not made any that are dressy fancy. That might be an option someday. I mean, a little bit of a, like a silk wool yarn, would that have a little, yeah, you could do a lot of different things. Anyway, so I will link to the drops version of the pattern. Just beware, it's a little awkwardly written, but it's a free pattern. So, and if you have creative knitting, or if you ever find these in your thrift store or wherever, they're pretty good. There's a lot of good patterns in them and inspiration. So, like, look at that sweater. That's, I would, you know, yeah. So here's a nice, that's a nice classic one also. Yeah. And that's from 2009, so a little while ago, 15 years ago. Still good stuff. While we're talking about magazines, and this is getting long, I'm sorry. Well, I'm not sorry. I haven't been here in a while, so I need to talk. I got this in the mail, the last issue of Interweave Knits. That's sad. It's really sad. When Interweave Knits came out, I loved it. It was such a good magazine. Interweave Press was just, you know, the forerunner in all of the good fiber information, spin-off, hand-woven, Interweave Knits. They did Interweave Crochet for a while. I'm going to forget some. Herb Companion. I think it was Herb Companion. I don't think it was Herb Quarterly. Herb Companion. You know, they just had so many good publications. And that's just the magazines. The books are amazing that they put together for fiber artists. Just phenomenal. And they sold, they did some splitting up. The publisher owner, Linda, wanted to retire, sold off Interweave Knits to, I want to say it's Gold Peak Media, and I don't know too much about them, but it changed after that. And in fact, they ended up republishing, or Interweave picked up some of the old publications and started them up again because they weren't happy with what was happening with the new versions, but they did not get Interweave Knits back. Oh, they also did piecework. That's another great one. They still do piecework. And then they had one for a while called Knitting Traditions, which that was my all-time favorite because of the history that the research that they would do. I learned so much from those magazines. They were history lessons. You know, it was like the National Geographic of knitting. It was great. They took you everywhere. So it would be wonderful to see that kind of quality and in-depth research come back in a publication. I don't know if we'll see that. Publication styles have shifted, definitely. But what they say on here is that they have exciting news that it's going to be a Knit Makers Club now, and I already have a membership because I'm a subscriber, and I really have to check on this. I haven't checked on it yet because I think I had my Interweave subscription auto renew when it was due, and I'm not sure I want that to happen with this group because I don't think that this will be beneficial to me. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't looked at it yet. I guess if I'm going to look at online patterns and articles and that, I will start probably with Ravelry rather than a publication type, you know, than another website. And I did notice also in this issue, like Interweave Knits, in the old days, you know, would have such beautiful photography. Joe Coca photographed all of the magazines, knits and handwoven and spin-off, and there was just a style to it that he had. And all of these patterns in this issue, different photographer, of course, and they're all studio shots. There's nothing taken outside or on any kind of indoor location that you can tell. It's all just backdrops. And to me that, yeah, does like, okay, we don't want to put any effort into this, or very little effort into this, doing this, you know. You need good photography. And I was looking at some of the some of the photogs are good. You know, they're showing you details and everything. That's important, but they're kind of bland without you know, interesting backdrops and interesting locations. And I used to think, does it really matter that you've gone to, you know, such and such a location? Well, I kind of think it does. Yeah. So yeah, we'll see. Not sure about the digital platform. I'll let you know. I'll let you know what I think. And if you have this and are going through the same experience, let me know. Let us know what you think about that transition and what you're going to do about it. Yeah, so that's that. Really briefly, because I'm almost done. It's an hour. I'm almost done. Really briefly, I have been doing some other things. This is another thing besides the knitting. I am taking a couple online classes in art journaling and in bookbinding. And we're just doing some little things, like this was a little tunnel journal that we made. And this is all actually, this piece of little booklet was an 8.5 by 11 piece of cardstock, and it's how you cut it and then fold it. It becomes this little pamphlet, and then we did what they called a tunnel journal, and I just collaged mine and had a seed catalog handy that day, and so I did this little, yeah, I didn't put any words. Some people, I didn't think there was a lot of room to put words over the, you know, the photos. So, and I was on the spot. When I'm on the spot, I'm like, I don't know what the words are. So I just did photos, and I think it turned out, it's interesting. It's just a little, you know, it's interesting. But then, and this is another version of that. I had a pamphlet piece of cardstock. This was supposed to be a 3-panel brochure. And so I just folded it into that. You can kind of see how, yeah, it's one, you make one cut in an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, and then it's just how you fold it that you get this. We did some covers. This was just a little cover I made. There's nothing inside yet. Then we made these covers of cloth, and then the next week we did Coptic stitching, which was interesting, and I need to, my book is very loosey-goosey, so I need to learn how to make my Coptic stitching a little tighter, but that's kind of a fun one. And then one week we did a paper bag journal, and I used a bigger bag. I'm not sure what store this came from, but because I had some bigger paper as well to fold and put in there, and you know, we stitched it down the outside. And yeah, she said, you know, get a bag with handles. A lot of people were using gift bags, and you know, they're so cute, all the different gift bags you can use. And all of these so far have blank pages in, and like this one is big enough that I could write in and, you know, use it for an actual journal, which I probably will do. Some of these that are small, I am not sure what I'm going to do with. So I think really this is for me to learn the techniques, and then in the future, what I will probably do is like put some signatures together with stuff already in them. Like I've been saving a lot of inspirational quotations and, you know, some artworks and things like that, and maybe print that out, put it on there, or collect some things like that from print sources and assemble those signatures and then stitch it together and have it already have content in it rather than have it be blank. Because I'm just not sure what I'm going to fill this up with. This was another one. This was the one we did this week on Japanese. They called it Japanese stab stitch or side stitch, and that was a fun one. And I used some old stationery that had this wood grain to it and had a little border. So it's just been fun to try something different and get my creativity going. And maybe, I think that's it. That's part of why I'm not that gung-ho right now about knitting, because I'm doing some other things. I want to do some sewing. I really want to do some sewing. I've got some good ideas, and I've been gathering some fabrics. I need to clean the sewing room, and that is really what has been preventing me from knitting, is I'm just in this clean and purge mode. Or I want to, and I need big chunks of time to do it well, because I clean for 10 minutes and then in an hour it's all kind of filled back in. It just that seems to be what happens in this house anyway. So like last night I got up, I went to bed early, and then I realized I wasn't that sleepy after all. So I got up around 10:30 and purged until midnight, and I got a lot of stuff to haul out to the recycling bin this morning, and I made a dent in my spare bedroom, and put some things in order, and I was very happy. And I need to take advantage of those bursts of enthusiasm and keep going on it. And I had this whole stack of cross-stitch books, trying to figure out what to do with them. Do I try and sell them online? They're nice, beautiful books in beautiful condition, but does anybody do that kind of cross-stitch anymore? From the 80s, the scenes and the things like that. So I don't cross-stitch as much, so I'm not sure if it's that relevant. And I think what I will end up doing is donating them to a thrift store, and just then I will forget that I had them, rather than try to get them to someone who really, really desires them. So, I started cleaning up in December when I had the Christmas decorations upstairs, and that whole room in the basement was just a mess, where all the decorations get stored and the canning is stored. And so I spent a lot of time down there, and now I didn't get to go through every box, but I can get to all the boxes now. They're all put back up on the shelves, and there's not like 3 half empty boxes cluttering up the way. So it's nice down there, and it feels better. I don't feel too, there's no anxiety to walk into that space anymore. That's a good way to put it. In my cleaning last night, I found one of these. One of the episodes, one of the issues of Tightwad Gazette, and I happened to look through it, and I thought, gosh, this is all still relevant to me. This is from 1996, June, and she talks about, for one thing, the unemployment opportunity, what to do if you're going to, give up your day job, or how you can give up, how you can do that, what else you need to consider, as far as how will you have your income. So a good finance article. Then she talks about school photos, not relevant to me, but I'm surprised that school photos still exist with all the good photography options we have now. They do. Talking about the home computer, which is that's dated, but here's a good article about siding. And now this, there are a lot more siding alternatives these days, but just about the process of figuring out what kind of siding is best for you, and a contractor and all of that, that's still relevant. And I do need new siding in the worst way. So I'm going to reread this article. She talks about alternative medicine a little bit. Here's a good one. The 95-cent quilt. And that's one thing I want to do. I've been collecting all these fabrics. Some of them are new pieces, and some of them are used pieces, used linens and that I want to get sewing with. And I have a real love-hate concept of quilting with brand new fabric, that you're buying. I mean, it's just like us with yarn. we buy all this new yarn and we make a thing. But to cut brand new fabrics all up in pieces and then put them back together, it's like the whole concept of quilting originally was to use scraps and make something, so that's really more the way I look at quilting and want to do it. So I think I'm kind of coming up with sort of a hybrid of that idea. New fabric plus old fabric, or, new fabric augmenting old fabrics when needed. I guess that's maybe a good way to put it. So yeah, 8 pages, packed a lot of information in, and I will be taking a look at this. Okay, it's just a little over an hour. I've gone fast. I've talked a lot. I'm enthusiastic because I haven't seen you in a couple weeks. I haven't seen you at all. You see me. You know what I mean. It's nice to hear your comments and your ideas. I appreciate that so much. I'm sorry I do not have a giveaway this episode. I will be, again, as I'm going through and cleaning and purging, I know I will find some things. I actually did find a couple things that I set aside that would make good giveaways, and I know they're, duplicates of stuff I have. And yeah, so there will be one coming. We still haven't gotten to 500 subscribers. It's getting closer. It's getting closer. I think we need about 30 more maybe to get there. And then I said I would do a big giveaway, and I'm planning for that. I thought when we got started, there was like this burst of interest, and I thought, oh, we'll be there in no time. And then it's kind of tapered off, and that's fine. I still enjoy doing this, so we'll get there. And I hope to get a giveaway put together for the next episode. I'm not sure what that's going to be about, but it will be in 2 weeks on the 29th on Leap Day, because can't resist having a Leap Day episode. So, and also, it was easier to do it today. My schedule is a little more free. I didn't have yoga today, and I don't have yoga in 2 weeks. So yeah, it'll just make it, give me a time that I can record. So that'll be good. So with all that said, knit yourself a headband or a bandana or a little cowl. I love, this just keeps my neck warm in the house, and it's easy to put on under a jacket to go out for a walk too, and have that. I'd rather have a cowl that's closer to my neck like this than a big long one. So simple, easy, quick projects, very satisfying, very fulfilling. I hope you try one or both, or share other simple, quick little ideas like this that you've made. That would be super. And we will see you again in a couple weeks. In the meantime, enjoy the winter sun, the spring. Early, it felt like April here the last several weeks. It was a bit odd where we're, not supposed to be like that. I'm glad we have some snow, even though it's melting already. It's not going to stick around. It's just nice to see it. That's the first precipitation we've had in a few weeks, and that's scary. We need the precipitation. So enjoy your day, enjoy your weekend, enjoy your knitting, your creating, whatever you are doing. Take care and have fun. Thank you.